Hey everyone, welcome to yet another Teach Kevin Your Thing session. In today's session, I'm going to be learning user management for React and Next with Dev Agrawal. How you doing, Dev?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. By the way, the music that you have playing in the beginning is very cute, very awesome. I was
Great.
bopping to it.
Oh, nice. Fun fact, I actually made that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, didn't know that you're a music maker. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I try. So let's talk about you a little bit. So
Mhm.
of course we're gonna geek out on all the user management thing, React and these things, but first let's meet Dev Agrawal. Could you tell us who you are, what you've been doing and what you're going to do?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been writing JavaScript apps for like 6, 7 years. I started out with PHP actually, and then I moved on to JavaScript around 2017, 2018. um, I basically like dove directly into full stack development. I did some freelance projects initially, and this was when I was back in India. Then I wanted to get more into the tech scene, and obviously, like United States, it's like one of the best places to be. So I applied here for like universities for undergrad degrees. I came here to get an IT degree at University of Cincinnati, which I graduated from this year in April. So I'm a recent college grad. Um, Oh yeah, but along with the college degrees, I've been working on a bunch of side projects. I had a full time job as well. I had some part time jobs, and like basically throughout my college life, I've been still writing JavaScript applications, uh, React, Angular, Node.js, Nest, pretty much everything that you can think of.
Hmm,
Yeah.
awesome. Really? That's good. So I think I also came from the PHP world to JavaScript. Ironically, we have JavaScript dev going to the PHP world these days. But it's all right. It's all right. It's fine. It's fine. Balances. So that's a really long time, 6 7 years. You've literally done some Angular, Subnode, and now you work at Click, right?
Yeah, so I discovered Clerk last year in like November at a conference. The CEO Colin, he was giving a demo, uh, and he literally like went from zero to a full B2B authentication in like less than 10 minutes. And after that demo, I was like, I need this in my applications right now. I like I was I mean I almost immediately fell in love. I tweeted about it. Then I later talked to Colin and James, who's the other DevRel, or who was a DevRel at Clerk at that time. Now he's transitioned to a different role. He's still at Clerk,
Yeah.
but I chatted with them and really understood what it was about. And then I started using it and loved it even more. And then I resigned from my last job in December. Then I was looking for new roles, and I was already like doing a bit of content creation on YouTube. I was like, why not try DevRel? So yeah, and now I'm a DevRel at Clerk.
Yay. I was really excited for you after the announcement on Twitter when you got to roll because Clerk is sort of like, booming these days. It's almost like Michelle, it's really exciting, And so for the audience, can you just, let's skip like, the primer of what is Clerk and
Mhm.
what has it got to do with user management really for React and Nest?
For sure, yeah. Uh, Next, by the way, just sorry
Next,
about
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So Clerk is an authentication and user management provider that's primarily focused on React and Next.js projects, because that allows us to build the best possible experience for if you're working on a React or Next.js project. We can offer you an experience that's like completely catered to your specific needs and your stack, your project setup that fits in there perfectly. um, and on top of that, it's beyond auth. It's just all user management capabilities that you might need. Like not obviously not all. There's still a lot of things that are missing that we are also working on adding. But the goal of Clerk really is to give you access to all of these capabilities with minimal effort possible. And on top of that, also have a really nice user experience that you can just drop into your applications. without having to invest too much time into building, and really allow you to focus on building the product that you want to build, solve the business problem that you want to solve, and not have to invest a lot of time into thinking about how do I make this secure, how do I build all the authentication flows, how do I handle all the edge cases. Those are like because those things do take up a lot of time when we're trying to work on valuable projects.
Mm. That is true. Like that is true because, if you like not just the time really, but doing it
Mhm.
right, you authentication and authorization, those are really important. They're like sort of like table stakes at this point.
Mhm.
So the one thing that comes to my mind is like the first time I heard about Clerk, I'm like, okay, is it not what Firebase do already? What yeah, like what makes
Mhm.
Clerk really different from all that?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, a lot of these backend as a service providers like Firebase, Superbase, they have their own auth solution built in. But like I mentioned earlier, we like not only we focus just on auth because we focus on React and Next.js specifically. We are able to offer a lot more capabilities with a much lower integration cost, and the if you look at things like Firebase auth and Superbase auth, yeah, they have a lot of capabilities, but again, because they're an overall backend provider, they won't give you the best auth possible. They'll give you an auth that works in their platform, and then you can like it will integrate into their platform, and then you have to figure out how to put that into your application, what the UI looks like, and if there's any missing capabilities, how do you add those. But what Clerk allows you is that it's because we focus on the auth part, it's going to give you a lot more capabilities, a lot more out of the box, and we'll understand auth a lot better. We can offer a lot better user experience. So I'm sure we'll jump into like the pre-built components that Clerk offers, and these are components like a lot of the pre-built components that you'll see, especially from Firebase. Like it's something that you drop initially when you're starting out a project, but like a month into the project, you'll be like, okay, I need to get rid of this and I need to create my own auth flow, right?
Mm,
It's happened even with me because I used Firebase, and even like for the initial first month, the UI didn't really look good, and even though like we didn't spend a lot of time working on our actual application UI, it was like look, it was still much better than what the Firebase auth UI was. And
mm,
Clerk is on the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, where a lot of people who use Clerk are like, the sign in component is the best looking part of my application, and I agree
mm,
because that's it's also the best looking part of my application, because I don't have that much design and UX effort that I can spend on my entirety of application, right? But Clerk does, because not only it's focused on auth, but Clerk also uses the same drop-in components on clerk.com, on dashboard.clerk.com.
mm,
So the Clerk drop-in components are designed to like be there at the beginning, but also be there like 5 months, 6 months, a year into the project. They're designed to take you into production and like offer a great user experience, and then like all the infrastructure behind it as well. It's all like completely designed to cater auth specifically.
mm, mm.
I don't know if
Now,
that answers your questions a lot.
yeah, yeah, it does. So what I'm hearing is
Mhm.
Clerk sort of like make the auth bit really, really seamless. Even though Firebase
Mhm.
give you that, but Clerk is more focused and it provides more fine-grained components, right? And
Mhm.
make the offload really really seamless. Speaking about offload, there was this. I think Clerk started it. This no folks from Clerk started it where don't rule your own auth, and they are the other side of the spectrum where rule your own auth as a developer. So can you like let's just talk a little bit about the possible ways you you can get auth wrong if you roll it
Mhm.
as a developer because I think auth is more than just username and password sign up and you're done. Give them a
Mhm.
session or JWT. There's also reset
Mhm.
password. If you want to do magic link, forgot password and all those kind of stuff. Why do Why does Clerk not want developers to roll their own auth and just have this built custom made for auth thing that Clerk has made?
Sure, yeah. So the first thing that I would say there that, like, obviously, like, we did not, like, Clegg did not start the roll your own auth. This has been like, this concept has been around for like decades in software development, and it was basically borrowed from other industries. It's not even something that, like, a lot of people online, especially on Twitter, they like to like point out like, oh, you're saying don't roll your own auth right now, like, but we've been doing it forever. That's not true. Like, the idea of, this is a solved problem, people have already solved it, let's pick something off the shelf and use that instead of
Mm-hmm.
building our own, right? This has been around in the industry for decades. uh, if we go back to like some of the most influential books like domain driven design, uh, like from 20 years ago or something,
Mm-hmm.
uh, one of the very key concepts in domain driven design is this idea of subdomains, or like breaking apart your problem space into things that's your core competency, and things that are generic. And even
Yep.
like the examples of authentication and authorization are provided in there, as that, like, hey, these are generic solutions, these are not unique to you, it's a solved problem, there are off the shelf products that you pick up and use and you move on, so that you can focus your time building on, like, building the solutions for problems that don't have a solution, something that is an innovation, something new that you want to spend your time and effort working on. So that this is like one of the big, uh, and you'll see this like even in manufacturing industries, where people will like pick off the shelf products or outsource some parts of their physical product, their machinery, to other companies, and because they want to focus on building those pieces that are important to them, that they know how to build, that they want to build, right? So
Yep.
that's one of the big reasons uh, why I'm a big advocate for Clerk, is because I've actually spent 3 years not knowing this and building my own auth from scratch, and like not even using something like auth.js or passport. But yeah, like I've spent like 3 4 years not knowing this and struggling to build my own, not just login sign up flow, but forgot password flows or auth flows and all of those different things, where I could have just used something like Clerk and save myself a bunch of time, and actually like spent all that time building the things that I wanted to. And there's countless examples of that we'll run into.
Mm.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and obviously the other part of that is that it's not an easy problem to solve. So yeah, if you want to, you can pick it up and solve yourself. But there's always going to be more things. There's always going to be edge cases that you didn't consider. There's
Mm.
always going to be things that you don't even know exist in the auth ecosystem. Uh, like, compliance is like one of the big ones that I ran into last year.
Mm.
Uh, the project that I'm working I'm working on the side, pretty much like from like day one or like week one,
Mm-hmm.
we were like, okay, our customers are these specific organizations who care a lot about data security, about information security. So we are going to have to think about like CGIS compliance, HIPAA compliance, and like my product guy told me that. I was like, wait, what even are these? Why do should I know what these are, or should I care about what they are? Should I have to implement them? And I don't want to. Like, I'm a solo developer, I have one other person who does some UI work, I have one business guy who talks to the companies. Like, if I'm a solo developer or a team of like small 2 and 3 people, is it like auth in itself is such a complex problem that like I'm probably going to spend a month solving on my own. But on top of that, do I have to learn what CGIS compliance is, what HIPAA compliance is? Do I have
Mm.
to like figure out if my infrastructure is compliant in that way? Do I have to invest my effort into that? Do I really have to like deal with all this sensitive data, sensitive operations on my own? Like, how much, like, do we ever think about storing credit card numbers in our own databases? We always outsource that to Stripe. We don't roll our own payments because that's a that's a big pain. So
Yep.
why do I want to roll my own auth? That's not the problem that I'm solving, right?
Mm. That is true. Yeah. I really dig the subdomain because for every, let's say you're building a SaaS, you're going to definitely need
Mhm.
user management, not just user management like teams. Teams are actually hard to get
Yeah.
right because it so yeah, I like, I get the idea. The other bit which I'm always skeptical about because I'm very old and boring, not like old in age wise, but just in terms of the tools that I like.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just I like, for one, I've never had to use Firebase in prod. I don't think I've even used it that much. I just like maybe took one course on
Hmm.
it. I just felt, it was too third party and flexibility. But I get it, right? So yeah, I really want to see the TX of Clerk because that's one of
For sure.
my checkpoints, and also the flexibility. So do you think we should get on
Yeah.
onto it? Yeah, cool.
Sure. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, the main website will tell you it's like a more than authentication, the user management capabilities. I'm sure we're going to get into all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But here I have a Next.js project. Let me quickly run this and see what we have here. Pm run dev, and we're basically we can just add Clerk to this. I can go to localhost 3000. I hope it's running. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is just a simple to do app. Like I can say,
Mm-hmm.
hello
Yeah.
world, hello TKYT, right? And like any kind of an application that you would make. And if we can look a little bit in the source code. So this is using the pages directory. I know the app directory is now the recommended way to use Next.js, and Clerk fully supports the app router if that's what you're interested in. Um, but for this specific project, I think the audience might also be more familiar with the pages router so far. So I'm picking that one. Um, Really, it's just this one page or this one file. I'm also using this tool called Remult, which is kind of like a full stack CRUD thing. We don't have to get into it too much. It's pretty straightforward. But yeah, we have our task component here, which will uh, find all the to dos from the backend, and for our task, it will insert into it. And here's the form, and then the loading component, and then the tasks. Pretty straightforward so far.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so on the website, yeah, on the Clerk website, you can just maximize it. So you can go to our documentation. We have a dedicated section for Next.js here, and we have a quick start. You can install. So we can start this here. Let's copy this and jump in here and pm install Clerk Next.js. I already have it installed, so it's going to be pretty quick here.
Yeah.
And then we need our environment variables. So at this point, we can go and sign up. Dashboard. Uh, if this is your first time signing up, you have to just quickly go through the sign up process, and then you can get on this dashboard. We'll add an application, and here you can choose how you want your users to sign up. I'll just stick to Google only. Don't need to deal with email passwords. I think we are really seeing the passwordless, or more people talk about passwordless these days because
Mm-hmm.
just passwords, they're a pain to deal with. But if your user base, they still want passwords, if you want passwords, Clerk fully supports that as well. So let's call this projector because that's the name that I've chosen for this one. I guess it's just a fun name. We're going to
Yes, it
create
is.
application, and here we have our keys. So again, we Clerk supports pretty much every major Java React based framework, along with like just basic React single page applications on top of Vite or Create React app. uh, we're going to copy this from here, and in here we have an env local file that I forgot to empty before this, and then I'll just paste this in here. So what we have here is a publishable key and a secret key. uh, I'll revoke this later, so it's fine. Like the secret key
Us.
shouldn't be leaked, but like, yeah, the publishable key is fine. This is the key that's going to go on the client side. it's what it is what enables our components or front-end JavaScript library to talk to the Clerk's API. And then the secret key is for the backend to be able to verify requests and access data within Clerk. So get user data, organization data, and all of that. Cool. For a bit, I think we can just follow this quick start guide here. So we installed we installed the Next.js package. We added our environment keys, and then what we have to do is to mount this Clerk provider. So in the app router, this would be in the root layout. In our pages directory, this would be in our underscore app. So I'm just going to copy this from here, the Clerk provider. Going to go back to here and go to underscore app. The only thing extra that I have here is the Query client provider from TKYT, because why not? You probably should use that anyways. Going to remove that from here and paste it here. And we need to import it. VS Code doesn't know where to import it from yet, so I'm going to write Clerk provider from Clerk Next.js. There we go. Cool. So that's step 3. Everything looking good so far?
Yeah.
So now Next.js has this middleware that runs on the edge. Absolutely amazing. And what Clerk does is that we just push all the authentication stuff to the edge so that the rest of your code basically doesn't have to check or doesn't have to run that sort of like the JWT validation. That all of that runs on the edge for us,
Nice.
or in the Next.js middleware for us. So we're going to code src middleware.ts. It's an empty file. I'm going to paste this in here. So if you're not super familiar with middleware, basically you can define any sort of a function that runs before any request is made to your Next.js application, and then you can describe when you want this to run. So the Clerk auth middleware is going to run pretty much like on any route that's not underscore next, which is like the internals that they use for, I think, static images and stuff like that. Yeah, what else do we have in here? We can build our sign up and sign in page, but at this point, let's try to run this again. So the last time that we ran npm run dev, we saw this to do application, right?
Yeah.
Now if we run it, let's see what we get. So we're going to go to this again, and we are going to redirect it to this sign in or sign up. Now this is basically a fully hosted authentication UI by Clerk. You can see it's on accounts.dev, which is owned by Clerk. And this is like one of the probably the easiest way to use Clerk, because basically what you can do is not have any authentication related UI in your actual application at all. And this is something that you might see a lot of applications using. A lot of people like doing this if like they don't want to deal with the authentication UI. They just want to, like, if you're not logged in, they'll send you to another place, like go here and log in, and when you're logged in, come back to the application, and then you can access it, right? You might see this flow quite a lot, and we enable that out of the box. This is we call this the accounts portal. I think it's on dark mode. Yeah, we call this the accounts portal. So by default, if you're not signed in, we'll just redirect you to the accounts portal so that you can do you can sign in and whatever and come back. And like, this is not just sign in, sign up. If you're signed in, you'll also see your user profile. You can see your organizations. So like basically all the authentication flows are hosted here if you want to use that. But obviously that's not what we're doing, because we want our UI in our own applications, which I assume most of the people watching, you would want your own login and sign up pages and stuff.
Yes, please.
Yes. So now what we can do is we can create those pages. So we have we're going to create a /sign up and a /sign in. So let's go to code. Actually, this one will need this. So src pages sign up index.tsx, and we're just going to copy and paste this in here. So all you need to do is to drop in that sign up component that you have, or that we provide from Clerk Next.js. Why are you complaining? Never mind, you go. Yeah, so all you have to do is to like drop in the sign up component. We're going to see what that looks like in a second. Let me also do src. Oops, I wanted to copy this code. Src that. Oh, I misspelled that. Live coding is stressful.
I know,
There we
but
go.
it's fine. You're
So
doing all right.
now, thank you. So this is a pattern that Next.js uses for like the catch-all routes.
Okay.
So even if you go to like slash sign in slash something something something, you're still going to see this page, and we do that because we'll see that soon. So one last thing that we need to do here is add some more environment variables. So these environment variables are basically instructions to Clerk on like redirect URLs, and we do it in environment variables so that like uh, there isn't like, okay, you have to drop this here, you have to specify this here.
Yeah.
uh,
You,
Before the environment variables, there was a little more confusion on how do we specify where the sign up route is, where the sign in route is, but this kind of streamlines it.
nice.
Yeah. So here we specify that slash sign in and slash sign up, like we have defined here in our pages, are our sign up and sign in routes. So now let's npm run dev once again. And now let's try going to localhost 3000. So this time it should not redirect us to the accounts portal. Instead, it's localhost 3000 slash sign in, the page that we just created. And this is our sign in component. And if we go to sign up, this is now our sign up route. And again, this is the pre-built component that comes with Clerk. And just let's just take a little bit of time and clean this up a bit.
Yeah.
We're going to do the hardest thing in the universe, which is center a div.
Very
So
hard.
I'm going to say flex items center.
But
I
you
think
got Tailwind.
Flexbox has made it a little easier for sure.
And
Yeah, I
Tailwind.
do have Tailwind. Yes. Oh, it's not item center. Is it content center? I just did it yesterday. How did I forget
Yeah,
already?
just
Justify
five
center. Okay,
seconds. Yeah.
there we go. And let's add another one. Flex call. Div. Oh, I need to do main edge screen. There we go. Now it's on
Looking
the
good.
actual center of the page. And let's also just add this to the sign in. Okay. Oops. I have the auto import on. Yeah. So this is the pre-built component that comes with Clerk. Actually, let's add the email password in here so that it looks more like what people might be used to. And this will also give us a quick introduction to the Clerk dashboard, which is where you would go for any sort of configuration that you want from Clerk. So you can go in here and you can see that email address is disabled because we disabled it when we started the application. So we can enable that. We can enable username. We can enable like passwords, links, codes. Um, these are for multi-factor authentication, which is something that I forgot to bring up when we were talking initially.
Yeah.
Multi-factor authentication is also like such a pain to deal with, but like in like for some sort of applications, is basically a requirement that
Mm-hmm.
if you're selling any applications to other businesses, if you're building B2B, multi-factor is kind of like a requirement because a lot of companies might not even be willing to adopt anything that you give them if you don't have multi-factor, and good luck implementing that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to apply that. This is not a snarky comment. Like
I
I've
know.
tried to implement multi-factor. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And not just that, even OAuth, I've had to build
Mhm,
like for GitHub and Google. Yeah, it
mhm.
takes and not every developer is as patient as I am to like figure that out and go through the docs, which is like just very cryptic sometimes. But yeah, it's definitely a pain, really. This is fun stuff.
Yeah. And now we just refresh here and we're going to see our email address
Oh,
as
cool.
well. And we can sign up from Google. And we have our sign in page as well, which, oh, I, that's an issue. There we go.
Yeah.
And now but now if I go to localhost 3000 again, it won't let me go back there, right? It will
Mm-hmm.
always send me to sign in.
Yeah,
But we
because
might
of the
still
auth
want to show
middleware,
on
right?
page. Correct, yeah.
Cool.
But we still might want to show some pages in the application if they're not logged in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for that, we can go to our auth middleware and we can add public routes. And I'm going to say that slash or the root page is a public route. So now if I
Okay.
go to localhost 3000, I have my to do application back. Let's go. This is loading right now because the API is also doing the same thing. So I'm going to say slash API slash this. So the public routes accept glob paths, which
Okay.
mean so this means that slash API slash whatever is
Mm-hmm.
also a public route, which
Cool.
means that uh, so that you can allow people to hit your API endpoints
Mm-hmm.
even if they're not logged in.
Okay.
Now, whether they get a result back, that's a different thing. Those are authentication rules that you'll
True.
specify in the route itself.
Yeah.
But at least you want them to like not if you want them to not just straight up get a forbidden error, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
you have some public endpoints and here you're exposing public data, so
Yeah.
we can add that here. And now we have our data back as well, so we can remove that. We can add another word, and basically we have our application running now. Um,
Nice.
but now there's no way to get to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
So let's add that now. We don't. I'm going to close the tutorial, and at this point we can go to our layout component, which is where the hello stranger comes from. And in here, we can just add a sign in button, and we're going to call that sign in. Actually, we don't even need to specify. We can just do that. And now we have the sign in here. It doesn't look like a button because tailwind. Uh,
Of course.
yeah. But again, all we had to do was to just drop this one component, and now we have this here. We can click on it, and it'll redirect us to the sign-in page as it was defined in the environment variables. If it's not defined there, then again, this will lead us to the accounts portal, which is hosted on Clerk. But if not, and the button is here. And if you do want to customize it, like you can add anything else in here. Like I can say button sign in, and now this is the exact same thing as it was earlier, but now I can give it say class name BG blue 500 or something. Let's give it some padding. There we go. Not the best looking button, but get the idea, right?
Yeah, of course. So what does sign? So just my idea.
Mhm.
What does sign-in button renders? Because now you have like the button inside of it. Like, is it? I don't know. Like, is it like a
So
Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, so it'll detect that if you're trying to render something inside it, then it'll just like wrap like it won't add really any DOM elements. It'll just add event handlers.
Oh
But if you
wow.
don't have anything inside it, then
Yeah.
it'll render its own button.
Oh, that's
So you
smart.
see how it changed to pointer, and here
Mm,
it's a button,
yeah.
the sign in. But if we add the button back in, still a button,
Yeah.
because so it did
Wow.
add an extra button on top of it. So we
Yeah.
can change this to span, and now it's a span instead of a button.
Mm. Oh,
So
that's
you'll see this
interesting.
pattern. Yeah, you'll see this pattern quite a bit in like any sort of a component library that adds behavior. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you want to customize it, they'll just allow you to add any element inside it, and like the component itself in that case will not add any elements.
Mm, cool. I like it.
Yeah. So let's just stick to the default for now, and let's sign in. And the other thing that we added in the environment variable was the after sign in and after sign up URLs. So like pretty straightforward once you're signed in, or once you're signed up. Let's come back to the main application, right?
Yeah, of
So let's see
course.
what that looks like. We're going to continue with Google. um, I'm going to sign up with my Gmail account, and we didn't do any OAuth setup. We didn't do OAuth credentials. We just signed up. We just added Clerk into the application, and we have access to all the OAuth providers.
Mm,
Cool.
interesting.
So now I'm signed in, and I'm on my main application. But now I want to be able to see if I'm signed in or not, or I want the application to know if I'm signed in or not and show some additional details. So we're going to use this use user hook that comes from. It has a funny name, use user, but it's
Yeah,
there.
I get
And
it.
yeah, and again, because of the React integration, or because we focus so much on React, we just give all the provide all the like pieces that you would like pre-built components and pre-built hooks, instead of giving you like, oh, here are some HTTP endpoints that you can call, and
Mm,
good luck wiring everything together, right? Like that's not a good experience.
yeah, I
So
agree.
here now, so we have the user object now, and we can say if user exists, then show me user dot full name. If not, we'll go back to stranger,
Yeah.
and now it has my name here. So you
Wow.
have, with just one hook, you have access to all the user data. But also we should probably hide that sign up button from there.
Yeah.
um,
When we're signed in.
yeah. So another pre-built component that we have is the signed in. So what this is going to do is, the things inside the signed in component will only be rendered if the user currently on the page is signed in. So let's actually move this in here. So inside the signed in component, we are going to show user dot full name. Why do I have my caps lock on? User dot full name, and along with it, we have a signed out. If I can type,
Yeah.
signed out component, and this is only going to be shown if the user is signed out. So we're going to add stranger back in here, and now the sign in button is gone, and I have my name here. But
Mm,
now, how do I log out?
yeah. Cool.
So one final, this is the most detailed, the one that's. Let me just show you. So this is called the user button, and instead of trying to describe it, I'll just show you what it does, right? And you might like be familiar with
Oh.
this sort, like if you use Google quite a bit. So we
Mm-hmm.
have the user button, it shows my default avatar. You can click on that. We have manage account, sign out, and this here is the user profile. This is like one of those pieces that the authenticate like there's a lot of authentication providers and libraries that will, like, they will give you the auth, but this is the one part that they most probably won't give you, because and you'll probably have to build this yourself somehow. So I have my entire profile here. I can upload image, remove image. I can add email addresses. I can remove them. I can verify them. I can change what my primary email is. I can add and remove my connected accounts. So if I at some point, if I want to log in not just with Google but also with Twitter, with Facebook, with any of those different providers, I can connect additional providers. There's some applications where, and this really frustrates me, which is that I've logged in with Twitter, but later if I go to the application, maybe I don't remember which OAuth provider I logged in from, right?
Yeah.
And if I log in now, if I try to log in from Google, because they have 20 different OAuth providers on their website, now if I try to log in with Google, it'll either create a brand new account for me,
Mm,
or it will just like not log me in and say that, oh, you actually logged in through Twitter with the same email, so you have to log in with Twitter again, you cannot log in with Google. And
mm,
like, you know that it's the same account, you just told me, just log me in there, you know that it's my email, I just signed in with it. So and these are like a lot of little things that uh, we try to think a lot about at Clerk, so that we
mm-hmm.
can make sure the user experience is as seamless as possible. So you can log in with Google, and now if I go back and log in with Twitter, if it's the same email, I'm going to log into the same account instead of a new account, or instead of it throwing an error. And then session tracking. So this is another thing that a lot of auth providers might not have, especially if you're trying to roll something on your own. Now, this is not a requirement by any means, but this is another thing that really elevates the user experience. Like I can go in here and make sure, like I know for a certainty that my account is not compromised, that I haven't logged in from somewhere else, or I know exactly where I logged in from, and if any something happens to my device, I can just quickly go and log out of there, instead of like having to contact support that, hey, I lost my devices, can you like log me out of anywhere, or things like that. um, yeah, so this is our pre-built user profile, and again we can sign out from here. So if we sign out, we go, one thing that I should also add here is an after sign out URL should be our slash, so that once you're signed out, again you go back to localhost, and we have our hello stranger and sign in button again. uh,
Nice.
so that was a big dump
Yeah.
so far. What do you think?
I like it really. I like the thought being put into every part of Clerk. And it seems, like it sort of integrates nicely with your project. Yeah, I think it's really good. And the profile is really impressive because you've actually thought of um, connecting accounts. I know it could be a pain where because I think Product Hunt do this or even Stack Overflow where you log in with a different OAuth and you have a fresh account. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really stressful, but I really like everything. And the user button is really really
Mhm.
thoughtful. And even if you logged in with OAuth, you have the ability to change your profile picture. All these little details is just cool.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why, like, I really like fell in love with Clerk, because like you'll see our CEO talk, like tweet a bunch, and he talks about it a lot, about like how weirdly excited, or like freakishly excited, he gets about like authentication and these little UX details. And like since I've joined Clerk, I've seen a lot of it. Like there's a lot of discussions about a lot of these small details, and really eliminating steps from like from this workflow. Like this was a really fast workflow. Like we have been talking a bunch, which is why it seemed like it's been longer. But
Mhm.
like if I went through all of this without talking, it would probably take like 5 minutes or something, and then I can quickly go back to like working on my to-do application instead of having to think about auth. And because all the features are there, all the pre-built components are there, I like the like having to concern myself with authentication capabilities, or like having to revisit those capabilities and like add features on top of them, or fix little bugs in them. Like that's basically completely eliminated from like most of my development workflow, right?
Yeah.
But we still don't have like actual authentication here, because I can still like access the application
Mhm.
without being signed in, right? So let's now, unless like there's something else you want to talk about before we jump in.
No, let's we can actually touch on it as we round up, but let's go with this
Mhm.
authorization.
Cool. Yeah. So let's go to our pages. I cannot type pages index. So this is our main to do application. I'm going to expand this a bit so that we can see more of the code. Um, Now, again, this is our main layout here. So I guess the first thing that we want to do is that when you're signed out, you should not see the to-do application. That's
Mm-hmm.
straight as that. Or actually, let's do the authentication on the backend first.
Okay.
Um, because you can authenticate on the UI, but you also want to make sure that any API requests that are hitting your backend for fetching data, they're also secure, right? You don't want to show data before without the person being logged in. Now for this here, we are oh, hi, my cat is here. You might have hear on
Hey, that's fine.
camera.
Hey, you.
Cool. So I'm using remult here. Let's go to pages API. Now this dot dot dot, again we saw that for sign in,
Yeah.
and you might see something similar for like things like nextauth or um, TRPC or anything that like kind of takes control of all your API routes. And in here I have a get user function, which is
Mhm.
my authentication stuff. Give me a second. I have a hard time working when she's up here.
Mhm.
Okay, she's gone. All right. Um, so basically what we can imagine here is that we have a regular Next.js API handler. Like you might have a function handler that takes in a request object, which is next API request. And this is probably going to be an async function. And in here, you're going to do things like parse body, validate payload, authenticate request, um, fetch data or perform some action, and then return the result back, right? So this is kind of what any API handler would look like, whether it's in Next.js or Express or Sales or Next or Nest, whatever really.
Mhm.
Um, and here in the authenticate request part, all that you have to do inside Next.js is call this get auth function, which comes from right here, Clerk Next.js server, right? And in here you can pass the request object, and you don't even have to specify a wait here because this is because the token validation actually happens on the middleware.
Mhm.
So on you in your API handler, you just have access to the user ID. Now this can be a string or a null. If it's a string, that means the user is logged in. If it's null, that means the user is not logged in. And then in here you can do certain checks, whatever is specific for this API endpoint. Like if this is like a create to do function, then you
Mhm.
might want to, like, if not user ID, then through unauthorized header, something like that. And in here you also, if you want the access to the entire user object, if you want more details from Clerk, you can do a Clerk client. So Clerk client is also comes from our Clerk Next.js package. This is what gives you access to all of Clerk's data in your backend.
Okay.
Um, and Clerk client would look the pretty much the exact same regardless of whatever backend framework you're using. So Next.js, Redwood, Gatsby, or Remix, or even things like Express, they all use the same Clerk client. In here, I can do users. Let me get rid of that. And thank you, Copilot.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can use Clerk client to get access to the user object if you want, or like any other information from Clerk if you need that in your backend. But for our purposes, we only need to know if the user is logged in or not, and we want their user ID. So inside this get user, I'm going to do basically the same thing. And if there is a user ID, oops, wow, user ID, I'm going to return an object that has an ID, and I'm going to specify user ID. Now this is a little remult specific. This is just a way of for me to tell remult that
Mhm.
the current user is signed in and here's their ID.
Okay.
Really nothing beyond that. There's also more information that I can give remult, like I can give it certain roles. If remult has any role specific authorization uh, to implement, but we don't have any for this project here.
Okay.
Cool. So we have this here. This will tell remult if the user is logged in or not, but we can still do all of this. So one final thing that we have to do is to go into our entities. This is kind of like an ORM entity, like a Prisma schema or type ORM or anything like that. This is kind of where remult's magic comes from, because it basically allows you to access, like do the dot find, dot update, dot delete, all the CRUD operations directly on the front end, which is why it's really nice for like quickly building applications. So here, for now, I'll just change this to false. And then here as well. And now what we're going to see, if we refresh, no task found. So because I just changed the allow API correct to false,
Yeah.
now when the application try to fetch a list of to-dos, it's not going to get anything, and instead there's going to be some forbidden errors in my console. Cool. So now let's sign in. Sign in with Google. Going to sign from there. And now I'm signed in. I'm still getting it. I'm still not getting anything though, because I actually need to change this to allow.authenticated. Now, if I come back here, I have access to my to-dos again. So now this is a way to tell Remel that, okay, you can allow the CRUD operations if the user is signed in. The false was just like, okay, there's no operations allowed. You can only touch these through server code. But now this tells Remel that, okay, if you're not signed in, then you don't have access. If you're signed in, then you have all the CRUD access. So we're going to leave this. Now you can also add like more fine-grained roles here, role-based auth, or like really whatever you want, and for every single operation as well. But for now, we're going to leave it here. I think Remult deserves a whole different episode. Honestly, it's such a cool technology. I'm actually giving a conference talk later this month, like
Nice.
entirely around Remult.
Cool stuff.
So yeah. So now we have, if you're signed out, you don't see the to-dos. If you're signed in, you have access to them. And the one final thing that we need to do is grab user ID, or not user ID, just the user from, what am I typing? Use user again. Same thing that we did for getting the name. But this time, we need to pass into the task component a user ID, so that the to-dos that we see on the screen are filtered by the current logged in user. And it's complaining because right now I need to wrap it in, like, if a user exists. There. So now if a user exists, then show me the task component and filter it by the specific user. So now again, all of my to-dos are gone because I created those to-dos when I was not logged in. And now it's filtering by the to-dos that only I can create. I haven't created anything yet. So hello TKYT from. So now this is the one that I've created, and we can try signing in from a different account now. So I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to sign back in with a different account. This time I'm logging in with my dev@clerk.dev, and no task found. I can say hello from Clerk, and now like every user just magically has their own like their own to-do lists.
That's amazing.
And we can also see this in the little JSON database that we have here. Where is it? There we go. So we're just using a like JSON database for now, no fancy Postgres stuff. So there's a bunch of to-dos that were created with an empty user ID, which we did initially. And now here are the ones like hello from Clerk. This has the user ID of my new user, and this one has the user ID of my previous user.
Nice.
Yeah, and just like that, we basically have we have now like taken our little to-do list application and now made it something that we can publish, we can talk to people about, and we can start like inviting users to it. And it's now a fully authenticated application.
That's almost magical.
If you want to see magical, we can take it another step and convert it into like a full B2B with organizations. I think that'll take like another 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Wow. Okay. Sounds like a lot of flex, and you are allowed to be proud because this is an amazing tool you all have built. Really, it's I see it as, for builders, even organizations that are like, maybe next heavy or maybe client side or front end heavy. You could just have this robust backend because Clerk is taking care of a lot of things. Because I know if you have to do OAuth, you need to get the client secret from Google and the client
Mhm.
ID and all that. But it feels like Clerk is abstracting even you having to touch the. That's it's like a giant portal for all your auth things where
Yep.
the it's abstracting a lot of good details really, which is actually really great. And yeah, that is fun, and especially with the component side. So you already have your UI all going, you just dropping things.
Mhm.
I really really like it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and about the thing that you brought up with OAuth, yeah,
Hmm.
having to get like OAuth credentials, set up
Yeah.
callbacks, that's
Hmm.
definitely a pain. But like in production, you definitely need to have your own OAuth credentials because OAuth
Okay.
consent needs to be provided like
Uh-huh.
directly to the party, right? Instead of Clerk. So you
Yeah.
so it like you said, it's a portal for all your auth stuff, but
Hmm.
it's also fully customizable. Like for example, here in social connections, you can go in, and if you have credentials of your own, you can drop them in here.
Okay,
uh,
cool.
but then when you're creating a production application, then you are basically required to add OAuth credentials because we
Mm.
don't like we have shared credentials for the development instances. That's another thing
Hmm.
that I should probably mention, that every
Yeah.
application has a development and production instance.
Okay, cool.
So the development instance is specifically like it's designed for this experience that we just went through of
Hmm.
like minimal configuration and everything just works out of the box. But when you switch to production, there's going to be things that like configuring your OAuth credentials and adding a few DNS settings so that um, the auth happens on your own domain. So like if I own my domain devagr.me or
Hmm.
something like that, um, I don't want the authentication to happen on clerk.com or accounts.dev and then have sensitive information be shared between two different domains because that's a little surface area for attack. So or for things like cross-site scripting. So for production, we seal all of that completely by by having you add some DNS settings. So instead of the authentication happening on accounts.dev, it's going to happen on clerk.mydomain.com so that there's no cross origin vulnerabilities there and it's completely sealed up for you.
Mm.
And then on top of that, there's a bunch of like there's all sorts of configurations here. Email address, you can say that it's a requirement if you want users to specify an email address, if you want to be able to send them like promotional emails or things like that. You can have different verification methods, and obviously we talked about multi-factor a bit. And there's also things like sessions. There's a really cool thing that multi-session handling, which is like you might see on Google, being able to be logged into multiple accounts at the same time and then
Yeah.
just switch between them instead of like the sign out sign in that we just did. Like even
Mm.
features like that are fully built in.
That's cool. Yeah. That's a lot of cool stuff, really. This is exciting stuff, Dev. Well done to you and the Clerk team. I really like this. Um,
It's great
so
to
yeah,
hear. I'll pass the message along.
yes, definitely. I've actually already tweeted about it because if I like it too, I'm very quick. So this is amazing. Yeah.
That's good to
Uh,
hear.
yeah, sure thing. So where does one go? Okay, no. Let's talk about, because this is all good, but I do know Clerk is like it's a SaaS, right? So
Mhm.
how does, like, for developers who want to try it out, what's it called? Like, what's the free plan like?
Yeah. So for the free plan, you can go on our website. You can check our pricing. We have 5,000 monthly active users, and this is on the production instances. Um, and you obviously have like pretty much most of the authentication features that we went through that you will see on our dashboard for the free plan. And 5,000 users, it's like quite a bit if you're trying to experiment with something new, if you're trying to build a startup, if you're trying to
Yes.
like find products. Like I think 5,000 users is where like, okay, now we have something real here, we are already starting to earn money and we can
Mm-hmm.
start investing it into things so that we can keep our focus entirely on building our product, right? And on top of that, now these pricing, we are actually working on some. a newer pricing model that's going to be cheaper than what you see here. So it's on the works and it's going to be published soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that count on these prices for the long term because they're
Okay.
going to be reduced. But
Cool.
yeah, the prices are going to be based on monthly active users. So how many people have logged into your
Mm.
application in this month.
Mm.
But yeah, the free plan, it has all the features that you might want to need, and it's going to be valid for a long time unless you are really really successful.
Yeah, you want to be really, really successful. So you that is both good for you and work. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So yeah, thank you so much. This has been really enlightening because I know Clerk has been all over my Twitter. I've seen the talk by Collins. It's really good.
That's awesome.
And of course I've heard about Clerk from you and roll on your own auth.
Excited for you to try it out. I want to
Yeah,
see what your genuine thoughts and concerns are.
yeah, definitely. I would definitely going to try it out and see how it feels under my hands and the things I build.
Hmm.
But the thing is, I'm a Vue developer by default. So, but that doesn't mean anything. I could also try the Next and React things. So, thank you so much, Jeff. So, where does one go to find out more about Clerk? Do you have like a community?
Yeah,
Links.
we have a Discord community.
Mm-hmm.
The links. I mean, first of all, Clerk.com website. That's going to be where you'll find everything, including like our documentation, the process, and in here we have our links to the where is it? Yeah, Discord server.
Okay.
That's I
Okay.
thought we
Cool.
had a vanity URL. I guess we don't, or it's not linked here. But yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
have our Discord server, and obviously we have Twitter, or actually x.com/clerkdev.
It is
Um,
Twitter.
yeah, yeah. So you can follow the Clerk account here for like releases, and actually something that I've been recently working on, which
Yeah.
are these because we talk a lot about the role,
Mm-hmm.
how people roll auth. We decided to talk about how we roll our auth at Clerk.
Mm.
So we have this series on our company blog called How We Roll, which I've been working on for the last few weeks. So
Mm.
if you also want to learn about not just about authentication in depth, but how uh, a company, a product like Clerk implements authentication under the hood. What are some of the small details that goes into that? You can check out the series that I've been working really hard on.
Yeah, I think I read the one on infrastructure. I've actually read a couple. It's really
Thanks.
nicely written. Yeah, it's really good.
That's good to hear. I
Actually.
think we're going to publish a wrap up post today, so pretty
Okay.
soon.
Wow, that's really good. So 10 chapters of how we roll. So yeah, you all go read that. I think it's really educational. If even if you don't want to, go with Clerk,
Yeah.
just seeing or to just see the value of what Clerk is providing you and the because I read it. I think the password one was really kind of cool. How you all think about complying with the password rules and all
Mhm.
that stuff. It's really amazing, and even the infrastructure of how you need to connect to like an email service for you to send the links and the code where the user don't have to worry about it anymore because Clerk is taking that burden. Cool stuff.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like even if you don't want to use Clerk,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine because a lot of the at least the goal of mine while writing these have
Mm-hmm.
not been like, okay, I'm going to convince you to use Clerk, or I'm going to teach you about Clerk. No, it's about authentication. Like if you're using other authentication services, how are they implementing stuff, or just like education around how authentication works under the hood for these really large, scalable, complex systems.
Yeah, cool. I like it. So finally about you, like if I've
Mhm.
seen this, I want to ask you some Clerk or authentication question, or just want to geek out.
Sure,
Where
yeah.
do I reach you? Twitter? No, X. What
X, yeah.
that's always weird to say. I just hope they change it soon because, jeez, jeez. Okay, we'll find you
I
on it.
mean,
Hmm.
it's catching on.
I don't want it to catch on. It's just too. and now we have posts. It feels like my practice crowd app, posts. What is that? But it's fine.
Yeah,
It's okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Dev, for your time. This has been really insightful. Clerk is amazing. The thought shows from everything from the components to the dashboard to the flow and the setup process. Like one thing I love is a good DX in the setup process, and even seeing you all using environment variables. I know this is really thought out because I built a couple of SDKs at my day job, and I really love developer tools and seeing the thought, to make it easy. I love it. So yeah,
that's great to hear. It's a lot of validation.
yeah, sure, it
Clerk
is.
and voting stack. Let's go.
Oh, right. Okay, that's be fun. Let's see. Thank you so much, Dev. This has been amazing.
Anytime. Thank you very much for having me on here and bearing with me on the scheduling issues.
Yeah, that's fine. We actually did it at the end. Yeah.
Awesome.